You know, when you watch a grand illusionist perform a magic trick on a stage, um, there are generally two completely different ways you can experience it. On the one hand, you can just let yourself be swept away by the poetry of it all, the suspense, the narrative, the sheer emotional wonder of seeing someone seemingly levitate in midair.
Which is, I mean, that's how most of us want to experience it, really. It's fun.
Exactly. It is fun. But on the other hand, if you want to know what's actually happening, you have to force yourself to look past the velvet curtains. You have to look for the cold, hard mechanics, the trapdoors, the hidden wires, the pulleys, because those mechanics, they do not care about your sense of wonder. They just operate.
Right. And we usually force ourselves to choose, don't we?
Mhm.
Like, we either want to live in the poetry or we want to ruthlessly dismantle the stage to find the wires.
Huh.
We very rarely try to hold both of those realities in our minds at the exact same time.
Which perfectly tees up the monumental task we have for you today. Welcome to this deep dive. Today, we are taking an incredibly ambitious stack of source material, 5 deeply diverse books, and we are going to try to build a single unified theory of how the world
It's
works.
a heavy lift.
Oh, it really is. We are pulling from Maria Popova's Figuring, Stephen Levitt and Stephen Dubner's Freakonomics, Daron Acemoglu and James Robinson's Why Nations Fail, Brian Fagan's A Little History of Archaeology, and DK's The Politics book.
It is quite the stack, yeah.
Yeah.
But we aren't just going to give you, like, a standard book report on these texts.
Yeah.
Our mission today is to extract their core mechanics to construct what we are calling the reality engine.
The reality engine. I love that term.
Right. It's a conceptual framework that attempts to categorize literally all of human history, behavior, and power into 3 distinct layers. So we have the self, the machine, and the system.
And to make this work, we are going to divide and conquer a bit. You are going to play the role of the visionary systems theorist. You're the architect building this grand model.
I am ready.
And my job is to be the critical analyst. I'm going to stress test your architecture, ask the dumb questions, and make sure we aren't just hallucinating a pattern where there actually isn't one.
I wouldn't have it any other way. A model is really only as good as the pressure it can withstand, so bring it on.
All right, let's get into it. To build this reality engine, we have to start at the rawest input layer. The foundation of any system of human behavior is the individual. But right out of the gate, we had a massive contradiction in our sources.
We do a huge one.
Yeah, how do we reconcile a highly poetic view of human discovery with a cold, ruthless analysis of our actual daily behavior?
Well, we reconcile it by establishing the first layer of our engine, which is the self. To understand this, we look at our first source, Maria Popova's Figuring. Now, Figuring explores the historical lives of astronomers, writers, artists, people like Johannes Kepler or Emily Dickinson.
People we typically think of as lone geniuses.
Right, exactly. The myth of the isolated intellect. But Popova's core argument is that these great leaps of meaning do not happen in a vacuum. She argues that meaning emerges strictly through relationality.
Meaning like the web of people around us.
Right, the influences, the loves, the losses, the letters written back and forth over years. Intellectual discovery isn't just a lightning bolt hitting a solitary brain. It is an act of inner survival that happens through connection.
Oh, wow.
Yeah, so in this first layer of the reality engine, the individual is basically just trying to extract a spark of meaning, a raw human emotion, for the uncertainty of life. Popova calls this finding a chaos seed.
Okay, let's unpack this, because the mental model that helped me grasp this from the text is the constellation.
Oh, the constellation's a great way to look at it.
Right. If you go outside and look up at the night sky, sure, an individual star is beautiful, but the real recognizable form, the actual intelligence of the sky, is in the pattern the stars create together.
You need all the stars to see the bear.
Exactly. You need all of them.
Yeah.
Popova is arguing that human greatness is this woven pattern of encounters. It's a very beautiful, deeply humanist lens.
It is. It privileges our inwardness and
Mhm.
our moral depth. It says our intentions really matter.
Okay, well, I hate to ruin the beautiful night sky, but I am putting Freakonomics on the table right now.
Yeah.
Because if Figuring tells us we are driven by transcendence and moral connection, Freakonomics comes in and says, actually, you are just driven by simple hidden payoffs.
It's quite the tonal shift.
It's a completely different universe. The authors basically argue that if you want to understand human behavior, you ignore what people say their morals are and you look at their incentives, period.
Which transitions us perfectly into the second layer of the reality engine, which we call the machine. So if the self is the raw emotional input, the machine is the multiplier. And what's fascinating here is the mental model of a machine with hidden gears.
Hidden gears, I like that.
Yeah, when you look at how people act, You're just seeing the surface motion, the hands on the clock, but the incentives, the rewards and the penalties are the hidden gears actually turning everything underneath.
I'm going to need a concrete example here because hidden payoffs can sound a bit, I don't know, conspiratorial. How does an incentive actually warp behavior in real life?
Let's look at one of the most famous examples from Freakonomics. It's the daycare center study. So imagine a daycare in Israel where parents keep showing up late to pick up their kids.
Which means the teachers have to stay late, which is incredibly frustrating.
Right. It's awful for the teachers.
Oh,
So
yes.
Economist stepped in and introduced a financial fine. If you are more than 10 minutes late, you pay a small penalty. Now, what do you think happened?
Well, common sense says people stop being late. I mean, nobody wants to lose money.
That's what our moral intuition tells us. But the exact opposite happened. Late pickups actually doubled
Wait, really? Doubled why?
because the fine changed the hidden gears. Think about it. Before the fine, parents tried to be on time because they felt moral guilt. They didn't want to inconvenience the teachers. They had a relationship with them.
Oh, the relationality from figuring.
Exactly.
Yeah.
But the moment you put a price tag on it, it wasn't a moral failing anymore. It was just a service they could buy. They traded guilt for a few bucks and bought themselves an extra 20 minutes at the office.
Oh, wow. So the incentive completely erased the moral compass. It turned a relationship into a transaction.
Exactly. And another massive gear in this machine layer is what economists call information asymmetry.
Which is a very fancy academic way of saying what exactly?
It's simply when one person in a transaction knows more than the other. Think of a used car salesman.
Classic example.
Right. He knows the car's engine has a weird knocking sound that only starts after 20 miles. You, the buyer, do not know that. That hidden information acts as the lubricant for the hidden gears. It allows the expert to exploit the gap for their own payoff.
So the sources are pointing out a fundamental tension here. Moral language, like the constellations in figuring, explains what we wish were true about ourselves. But the hidden gears, the incentives in Freakonomics, explain what actually happens.
Which is why the reality engine needs both. You cannot just have one. You need the raw spark of human desire from the self layer, but then it enters the machine layer, where those desires are redirected by cold mechanics.
Okay, but that brings up a massive logistical problem for this whole theory.
What's that?
If human behavior is secretly driven by these hidden gears and information gaps, how do we actually find them? We can't just guess, or we'd just be projecting our own biases everywhere. How does the machine process its data?
Right, we need a reliable tool to dig through the noise. And that brings us to our third source, Brian Fagan's A Little History of Archaeology.
Which, I have to admit, felt like a total left turn when I saw it in the stack. I mean, most people hear archaeology and think of treasure hunting. Indiana Jones grabbing the golden idol and running from a giant boulder.
Right, the romantic movie version. But the text makes a crucial point. Archaeology's real history is the story of moving away from looting and moving toward disciplined methodology. It's about how we literally learn to read evidence.
The book talks a lot about concepts like stratigraphy.
Yes, stratigraphy is, simply put, the study of soil layers. It's moving from just grabbing the shiny golden idol to carefully examining the dirt around the idol. You are reading the layers of earth like pages in a book to understand the context of time. The mental model here is the palimpsest.
What is a palimpsest? Remind me.
A palimpsest is an ancient parchment. Back in the day, parchment was super expensive, so monks would scrape off old writing to reuse the page. But if you look closely, traces of the original writing remain beneath the new ink.
Oh, so the world is a palimpsest.
Exactly. The world itself is layered with history and data. To uncover the hidden gears of human behavior, we must learn the grammar of debris. We have to scrape back the layers systematically.
I hear that, but I'm going to push back on this entirely clean, progress-oriented view of science. I mean, method is great, but it's like upgrading from a magnifying glass to a microscope and completely forgetting that you're still only looking at one specific slide.
That is a very fair critique. The tool dictates what you can see.
Exactly. Even the book acknowledges this. Every scientific method brings its own cultural assumptions and blind spots. The data we pull out of the dirt or out of an economic study isn't a perfect mirror of reality. It is more like an alien collaborator.
An alien collaborator, I like that.
Yeah, it heavily depends on who is looking through the microscope and what they choose to point it at. The method illuminates things, sure, but it also casts shadows. Framing is everything.
I completely agree. The truth we reconstruct is always partial, but here is the critical thing. That partial truth, amplified by incentives and formalized by methodology, has to go somewhere. The gears of the machine don't just spin and avoid, they produce something durable.
And this is where it hardens into the system.
Yes. The third layer of the reality engine, the system. Once the machine amplifies our data and our behaviors, they harden into the ultimate rigid structures of human life. They become institutions. And to understand this, we integrate Why Nations Fail by Daron Acemoglu and James Robinson.
This book is a heavyweight. I mean, the grand claim here is that a nation's prosperity or its poverty isn't really about geography. It isn't about disease or culture. It's about whether its political and economic institutions are inclusive or extractive.
Let's use the mental model of a tree here. Imagine a massive, sprawling tree. The roots of the tree are the institutions. The trunk is the political power. The branches are the economy. And the fruit is either prosperity or poverty.
Okay, I like the tree visual, but give me a real-world example of the roots. What does this look like in practice?
Let's look at a real place the book focuses on, which is Nogales. It's a city cut right down the middle by a border fence. North of the fence is Nogales, Arizona, in the United States. South of the fence is Nogales, Sonora, in Mexico.
Okay, so they share the exact same geography.
Same geography, same climate, the same ancestors, the exact same cultural background. But if you stand on the northern side, the average household income is exponentially higher. Most teenagers are in school, the roads are paved, there is Medicare. If you step a few feet south of the fence, poverty is rampant, infant mortality is high, and roads are in severe disrepair. Why?
Because of the institutions.
Exactly. The roots on the northern side are generally inclusive, meaning political power is relatively constrained and shared, which encourages people to innovate because they know they can keep the fruits of their labor. The roots on the southern side, historically stemming from Spanish colonial rule, were designed to be extractive.
Extractive meaning they pull resources out.
Right. They were explicitly built to extract wealth from the many and funnel it to a tiny elite.
That is a chilling realization. Poverty isn't an accident of nature. Under an extractive system, poverty is a design feature. It is the intended output of those hidden gears we talked about.
And that trunk of political power that holds the whole tree up, that's where the politics book comes in. It surveys all these competing visions of human order across history.
I struggled a bit to connect this one to the tree, honestly. How does the broad philosophy of politics fit into this hardened system?
Think of it as a balancing scale. On one side of the scale, you have authority, the power of the state. On the other side, you have individual freedom. Institutions act as the pivot point in the middle. Politics isn't just a list of static ideas. It's the constant, recurring struggle of adjusting that scale. It's the ongoing design problem of deciding who gets to rule and for whose benefit.
So what does this all mean? Let's trace this entire journey for you, the listener, so you can see how this grand reality engine connects.
Let's do it.
It starts in the self layer. You have a raw emotion, a spark of connection, like the constellations we saw in figuring. Then that spark enters the machine layer. It gets subjected to the hidden gears of human incentives from Freakonomics, and we try to measure it using the layered palimpsest methods of archaeology.
It gets amplified.
Right, it gets amplified. And finally, it reaches the system layer. It hardens. It becomes the rigid roots of the tree model from Why Nations Fail, and it tips the balancing scale from the politics book. The raw emotion of an individual literally crystallizes into the monolith of political power.
That is the complete reality engine workflow.
Mhm.
Interpretation, amplification, dissemination, and feedback.
Okay, here's where it gets really interesting. You've built this beautiful engine. The workflow makes logical sense. But it is time for the skeptic's bar. I have to deliver the ultimate pressure test to this framework.
I am ready. Dismantle it.
Is this framework actually a powerful tool for decoding reality, or is it just an incredibly elaborate confirmation bias? Because I see a fatal flaw here, selection bias.
Okay, go on.
Look at the inputs. We just built this engine using 5 highly academic, deeply researched, high IQ masterpieces of human thought. Of course the engine looks like it works perfectly. You fed it premium fuel, and it gave you a premium smoothie.
If we connect this to the bigger picture,
Yeah.
you are absolutely right. Yes. If the reality engine is only capable of processing high-signal academic texts, then it is functionally useless for understanding the real world. It completely fails to capture the noise of everyday life, the actual chaos of the 99%.
Exactly. If this engine is going to be a true decoder ring for reality, It has to be able to process garbage data.
Hmm.
Tabloid news, random internet arguments, a boring corporate HR manual. It has to be able to structure absolute chaos.
Okay, let's do it. Let's test it live right now. Give me a piece of garbage data.
Oh, I've got one. What about that viral internet meme? You know, the one with the woman screaming and so pointing at the confused white cat sitting at the dinner table?
I know exactly the one you mean. Okay, let's run the screaming cat meme through the reality engine. We start at the self layer. What is the raw human input? The chaos seed.
Well, people share it because it captures raw, relatable frustration. It's the feeling of being wildly misunderstood by someone or something that completely does not care about your feelings. It's a spark of emotional connection shared millions of times. It's relationality.
Perfect. Now it enters the machine layer. The hidden gears. Why did it go so incredibly viral?
Incentives, the social media algorithms. The hidden gears of platforms like Twitter or Instagram are financially incentivized to keep your eyeballs on the screen. The algorithm knows that high emotion, high conflict images generate the most engagement. So the information asymmetry here is that the user thinks they're just sharing a funny joke with friends, but the platform knows it actually mining their attention for ad revenue.
Exactly. The method of amplification is built right in. And now, the system layer. Where does that amplified data harden into a monolith of power?
Oh, wow.
You see it.
Yeah, it hardens into the actual tech monopolies. The ad revenue, generated by millions of people sharing that cat meme, builds the extractive roots of a multi-billion-dollar tech empire. A massive corporation centralizes power, influences political elections through its algorithms, and shapes the global economy, all funded by the engagement generated by a picture of a confused cat.
And there it is. The reality engine holds up. We just traced the silliest piece of internet noise from a raw human emotion, through the hidden gears of algorithmic incentives, straight into the roots of global institutional power. It works.
That is genuinely incredible. I did not expect the cat meme to map perfectly onto global politics.
It always does if you follow the gears.
Which brings us to the end of our deep dive today. We started by looking at the poetry of human connection. We learned how incentives twist our moral intentions. We dug through the archaeological layers of evidence, and we climbed the rigid tree of political institutions.
We built a reality engine. And honestly, understanding this framework gives you a profound advantage. It means that every single piece of information you encounter is no longer just random noise. It exists somewhere in this engine. It is either a raw emotional signal, a hidden gear of incentive, or a rigid root of power.
It gives you a completely new lens for your daily life. Which brings me to a final challenge for you, the listener. Think back to that metaphor of the grand illusionist we started with. We've shown you the trapdoors and the pulleys today.
The velvet curtains are pulled back.
Exactly. Now, I want you to test the machinery yourself today. Look at the very first piece of absolute garbage noise you encounter. Maybe it's a junk email trying to sell you a miracle diet. Maybe it's a piece of trivial celebrity gossip on your feed. If you took that raw noise, that tiny, seemingly meaningless fragment of modern life, and you fed it into your own personal reality engine, what hidden systemic power structure would it reveal? You know, when you watch a grand illusionist perform a magic trick on a stage, there are generally two